As Camden National Bank celebrates 150 years of supporting local businesses, customers, and communities with their financial needs, we want to thank those who put their trust in us. You're the real reason we're celebrating this exciting milestone. And while we've grown to help more individuals and businesses, our commitment to giving back to our community remains constant. Whether it's joining in the fun at the Camden Snow Bowl for the annual US National Toboggan Championship, or serving cookies and cocoa at Christmas by the Sea, or handing out towels following the Camden Windjammer Festival lobster crate races in the summertime, we continue to immerse ourselves in our communities. That way, those who live here know they have a true financial partner. We're thankful for the work Camden Famous is doing to shine a light on the businesses and neighbors who have contributed to shaping this Midcoast community and our organization.
Welcome to the Camden Famous podcast. I'm your host, April Shaw-Beaudoin. And today I am joined by my guest co-host, Allison Brzezinski of Birch Bark Events here in Camden. And we have the pleasure of interviewing Tenderwild Farm. We have Rory Cohane and Peter Alsip. Welcome to the show, guys.
Oh, we're so glad to be here.
Yeah, great to be here.
Well, we're excited to learn all about Tenderwild Farm. You haven't been open that long.
That's right. The farm has actually been up and running since 2022. So we're coming into our fourth growing season.
Oh, okay.
But we have a farm store at the farm, which only opened in August of last year. So this will be our first full season with the farm store.
And it is the most lovely place in the Midcoast. When I think of a farm stand that I want to go spend time at, that I will travel for, Tenderwild is it.
That's so kind of you.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And I think we've been getting a lot of that feedback from, our customers in the community as well. I think what Peter and his wife Morgan have done there in bringing back this farm that, it hadn't been farmed since the 1960s. It had historically been a farm. And the job they've done in restoring both the farm land as well as the barn has made it an even more special place with their sort of eye and aesthetic and attention to detail, both in the crops and in just the beauty of the store itself.
I had the pleasure of going through the flower fields last August, and it was a magical experience.
Yeah, we set the flower block up so that you can see it from the farm store, and we encourage people to go down and pick their own flowers. We had some amazing experiences where last season, this couple that were about to get married, it was sort of a spur of the moment thing, and they went down and harvested the flowers for their own wedding, which was
amazing. they were just doing a small elope wedding and came in and asked if we had any bouquets, and we didn't at the time. It was the end of a Saturday, and I just gave her some clippers and said, "Oh wow, have at it." And she sent us a really nice note afterwards and some photos from their wedding.
Oh wow,
yeah. That's magical.
Yeah,
my goodness, wow. I love your space as well. The barn is just stunning in any season too, which is pretty wild to me that you can have this consistent level of beauty throughout all the seasons. And you mentioned, Rory, doing some upgrades to the barn. Would either of you like to share a little bit more information about how you've transformed that space?
The barn was, when we arrived on this land, was sort of falling down. So it's been a long journey. It was filled with like the detritus of decades of rotting wood, and there was a chicken coop in one corner. So it was like kind of a nightmare when we arrived. But I always had in the back of my mind that the space, there's something about entering a barn, the kind of cathedral-like ceiling, the majesty of it that, I don't know, it speaks to all of us somewhere deep inside. So it was always in the back of my mind that the barn could be a kind of a gathering place for people. So we just chipped away at it year after year. An amazing carpenter friend of ours named Jason Glick took on the job of sort of writing the barn. He had to cut out all the post bottoms and scarf in new joints. So it's come a long way.
And there's a place to sit so people can come and get coffee and enjoy an hour with their friends working.
Yeah, we're adding picnic tables this year. The the vision for the farm was always for it to be a place where you can see your food being grown and also just experience the natural environment and kind of feel free to walk the land and spread out and have this kind of relaxed, expansive feeling of being on a farm.
Yeah, and I think too, we have set it up as a cafe and a sort of an aspiring cafe, opening sort of late in the season last year. We serve coffee and tea, but this year, we want to expand. We have the seating, we have the structure there now, so we're going to be working with some other folks to bring in some pastry and have more to offer and sit and go out to the picnic tables with your coffee or tea and your pastry and eventually grow that side of things too.
Very exciting.
More of a food program over the years.
When I think of Tenderwild Farm, I think of community. And so I would love to just hear from the both of you about how that has become such a community space for you. I know that you also have a robust lineup of events that are upcoming that you're going to be releasing in the next few weeks. I know that the store is new, and right now we're doing a little revamp to reopen it in May, which is very exciting. So if you'd like to share about any of that, that would be great.
I think I've always, for whatever reason, felt called to bring people together. So that vision for what the farm could be as a kind of nexus for people to gather and connect, it's a bit in my nature. So it was always there from the beginning of the farm. We didn't really have the space to do that in the first 2 years. But now that the barn is in a place where people can enjoy it, suddenly we have that opportunity. And so 2 years ago, we did some sort of community events where we would just get a food truck and someone would play guitar, and we just opened the doors and said, whoever wants to come. We had a little kind of farmer's market set up in the barn with some other vendors and our produce. And there was such a groundswell. We didn't advertise it. We just emailed a couple of people. We did 4 of them over the course of a month on like a Wednesday night. And by the last one, we had a parking problem, it got a little intense, and we realized that there is this, there's not that many places locally where you can have this experience of kind of walking wherever you want, of just spreading out on a piece of land and kind of having this full sensory experience of the natural environment. And also, when you have that possibility, I think it kind of allows you to relax with other people and connect with people in a different way than when you're in, a crowded environment.
Yep.
So it just seemed like there was and people would come up to us and say, "That was so great. Can you have more of those?" So we've just kind of felt the pull and are trying to respond to it. And now this season with a lot more events of different kinds, which Rory can speak to.
Yeah, thrilled to have this opportunity. Peter and Morgan have kind of built the farm and the barn itself to be such an open place for community. And, I've always loved bringing people together as well. And I think we all come from creative backgrounds, so we're interested in fostering, a creative community there as well. And we have I'm really thrilled about our events this season. We have a number of music events. We have some community-based events. We're doing a solstice event, which we hope to become our cornerstone sort of seasonal event where the community can come together and celebrate solstice together. And we're working with Allison on developing that out. And so we just want it to be an open place for people to approach us and say, "Hey, I want to gather here. What can we do?" Not that we're a venue. We're not an event venue, but we want to be the host of community and coming together. And, whether that's providing a place for someone to do, a creative workshop, which we're doing a few of this season, or it's, an informal place for people to gather without an agenda and just sort of meet with their neighbors and meet with other folks who are like-minded and drawn to the idea of local organic food and sort of the principles behind that. It attracts, I think that's really the fabric of it. And everything else we kind of build with what we find, the conversations we find happening there and build off those. So.
And are you part of the Camden Farmers Market?
We are.
Okay.
Yep. We've been, this will be our third season at the Camden Farmers
Okay.
Market. We're one of the Saturday vendors. So the Camden Farmers Market runs early May to the end of October, 9 to noon on Saturdays. And it's been such an important market for us because all of our first customers have come through there. And that's how I met Allison. You know, it's and then once we opened the farm store, they've traveled to the farm store. This past winter, we launched an online store, which allowed us to sell our produce, other farms' produce, fresh bread, mushrooms, all sorts of things from local producers. And our core customers are those farmers market customers who found us 2 or 3 years ago. So we're so grateful to be in that market, and it's a really vibrant, exciting place to be.
Yeah. And you are part of MAFCA?
We're certified organic, and that certification comes through MAFCA. Yeah.
And you do the fair, which is totally escaping me the name right
Common
now.
Ground
Yes,
Fair.
Common Ground. I always want to call it the Country Fair Farm.
We
But
love the
yes.
Common Ground Fair. I love to
Yeah.
go and just relax and be there. I haven't felt like I wanted to be a vendor there because it would rob me of the pleasure of being there. It also falls on a weekend when we're at the farmers market. So logistically, it's challenging. Also, our farm crew, like everyone who works at the farm wants to go to the fair. So we just said, we'll leave it to other folks and we can go and just be participants there.
And how many people do you have working on the farm?
Yeah, well, we'll have 3 full-time seasonal crew members and a part-time crew member. Rory's full-time running the barn and events, and then myself and my wife Morgan, and our daughter Faye, who's 8, is she'll come and harvest some carrots from time to time.
I saw her planting the other day with you.
She will do some planting.
I saw her planting.
Yep.
It's so funny. Yes, we did meet at the farmers market, and it was so wonderful. And I can't believe that it's been 2 years that you've had the barn open in all of these different ways. And one of the memories that I wanted to share and would love to speak to you about is just sitting around that fire pit. And that to me is the essence of people coming together. People having hot dogs, having their brother shucker, just sitting there and just having casual conversation, getting to know one another. And then you've also had the fire ceremony with the Tibetan monks. And so I have seen fire also be this really pivotal element of the farm. And I'm wondering how that resonates with you and if there's intent behind that and anything moving forward with fire.
Yes. I mean, there's something, just like I think there's something elemental about being on a farm. There is something elemental about fire that sort of, I don't know, when you can see a fire and go and get warm by it, you just feel a little bit safer, like a major need is being met. So I've always, I grew up camping and around campfires. And so when we were, the stones from that fire pit that you're describing, Allison, they were in a heap by the barn. I think they were actually the foundation stones for the barn that had been set aside. So I had an excavator there one day and we just picked them up and put them around in this circle. And I thought a lot about, in that 10 minutes I had to decide, like, how close can this be to the barn to connect these two experiences? So the Tibetan monks who came last October, that was a happy accident. We were connected with Cynthia at Symmetry Base Camp, a store in Camden on Bayview, and she has a deep connection with a path of meditation, which is true for Morgan and myself as well. And she just reached out and said, I'm bringing these Tibetan monks. Would you be interested in hosting this fire ceremony? And of course, it was like an automatic yes. And it was such a magical moment at the farm that evening. We didn't really know what to expect, how it was going to work. They just arrived and figured it all out. And we had created this big bonfire for them to do their ceremony around. And then they had us scurrying around collecting some live spruce branches, which I wasn't sure what the plan was. And so as the fire's building, they start laying these spruce branches on top, and the fire suddenly becomes this swirling
Ooh.
smoke. And it was, this was at the end of October. So all the leaves were in full glory. The monks were in their ochre robes. 100 people were gathered around this fire, and the smoke, the wind started to pick up, and the smoke was kind of reaching into the crowd, and it was like this live thing that was moving around and kind of anointing all of us. So
there was an amazing moment. I mean, there were many amazing moments within that day and that event. But when one of the monks was reading from a prayer book, and the winds picked up, and the ashes were blowing, and the smoke was smoking, and the wind whipped a few pages out of his prayer book, and they just floated off across the farm.
And he didn't miss a beat.
No, to no bother to him, as if scripted. But it felt, going back to the elemental aspect of both the fire and the air and the earth and everything that, the farm, I think, has been and become again. And, there are these moments there that I just find so special and so magical. And I think it was very present in that event with those people and those monks and the community that came to surround them. I think it was kind of emblematic of this really unusual energy that the place has. I think prior to Peter and Morgan, but then I think they also were drawn to that because of their own selves and their energy, and it has a special vibe there.
Yeah, I wanted to stay. It was hard for me to drag myself away the first time I went. And I took so much video, and I shared about you on our Camden Famous Instagram, and people went wild for it. I know that it got shared a lot, and it is really special.
We hear that, during the winter, we're having this, online store where you can order on the weekend and pick up on a Thursday. And we also said, let's offer delivery because it's, it's winter, it's Maine. We have older clientele, and we want to be able to service them, and we'll offer delivery. And nobody chose delivery. And so I'd speak to everybody as they're coming to pick up and just sort of trying to learn and find out why. And they all just wanted that opportunity to come to the farm once a week. And they were,
even in the cold,
even in
the bleak, just to have that moment of connection. It was really, I feel really privileged and honored to be able to be in a position to create that space for people.
It was definitely a surprise, all of our plans of figuring out
we didn't buy the delivery van. Thank God.
I know. Yeah, all the logistics of figuring out the delivery, and in the end, people just wanted to come and be together and see each other and bump into each other and at the farm during that little window, of kind of winter reprieve.
One of the things that Alice and I have talked about is you both have a really interesting journey to Tenderwild Farm. You didn't grow up as farmers, and so I would love for you to share that story with the listeners.
Sure. My first career was as a magazine writer and editor. I actually went to journalism school. I helped start a magazine in Los Angeles called Good. And the thing that attracted me to that work was wanting to go deeply into a subject and be intimate with a subject. And sort of it would satisfy the deep, constant curiosity I have to learn. And at a certain point, maybe 20 years into it, I realized that my curiosity was actually deeper. Like I wanted to go into one thing and just keep going deeper into it. And at least with magazine writing, probably less so with book writing. You work on something for a month, 2 months, 3 months, and then you're always thinking about the next thing. And so I could feel in myself a growing dissatisfaction, and also it was a very much like a computer life, so I was indoors, I was on my computer, and I felt a kind of something wasn't resolved inside myself. And as I was feeling this, my wife Morgan and I, we had bought this little house in a neighborhood of Boston called Rosendale, and it had a tiny little yard. And this was 10 years ago. And as soon as we took possession of the keys, the grass started to die on this little lawn. Lots of other things were going wrong in the house, but the most public thing was our lawn was dying. And, this is in a neighborhood where everyone keeps their lawns perfect. And I was like, okay, I need to take care of this problem. So I took up the lawn and I planted new lawn. And then that lawn died. And I said to Morgan, let's do something. This isn't working, this grass business. She had grown up on the island of Nantucket, and she was a landscaper, worked in landscaping in her teenage years. And she said, why don't we plant an English country garden instead? Just get rid of this lawn. I did not. I had worked for a season on a farm in my 20s, but I hadn't done much growing of things. But I planted this garden. And then I found myself finding more places around this little postage stamp property where I could plant more things and more things. I would be at work thinking about these plants and what we could do and how we could make it more rich and vibrant. I started reading farming books while I was, putting my daughter to bed at night. And I remember this distinctly. One day I was walking on the sidewalk back to our house, and I looked at where our house was, and it was just the desert of lawn, all the way down the street. And then where our house was, this profusion of life, not just the flowers and the plants, but the insects and the birds. It was like this, you couldn't mistake it, this incredible abundance of life in this one little spot. And I just felt that is what I want to align myself with. I want my life to be supportive, bringing life to a place. So that's sort of the original impetus and the dream of the farm. And we had no business starting a farm. As you said, I did not come from a farming background. I dabbled in my 20s for a season on a farm and loved it, but never saw it as something that I myself could do. So there was a tremendous leap of faith that this inner call would be fulfilled. So it started there. And then along the way, we've been helped by people who've just also found the farm, and it aligned with their own path, friends, neighbors. And a year and a half ago, Rory, who was an old and dear friend of my sister's, but I'd never met him in 30 years.
Yeah.
He showed up at the farm, and we've been working
Broke
together
and
ever
unemployed
since.
and but looking for my way.
Yeah.
I don't come from a farming background. I grew up in the city in Boston, and had worked in and around food in various ways. Helped after college, helped a family member open up a little neighborhood restaurant in Cambridge, Mass. And I look back now and I see the connection between, sort of the role I played for her in building that community and programming and events and things, and what I'm doing here now with Peter. And it's making some sense, but you can kind of make sense of your own life in that way. Only in retrospect, I didn't know then that this would ever be, the result. And then I went off and I had a branding studio for 15 years doing a lot of similar things to what you do now. And when I wound that down, I knew it was time to do something else. Maybe it was the computer-based work. Maybe it was just midlife. Maybe it was, I'm not really sure, but I knew something had to change. So I was very lucky the way life kind of lined up that during COVID, I was able to go travel around the U.S. and my partner and I did that for 18 months or so, looking for a new place to be and a new life to start. And we looked everywhere, wondering where will we settle down and what will be the place. And we ended up back in Maine. We're both from the Boston area, and we'd both spent a lot of time in Maine over the years. And when we found it, Midcoast especially, we had spent a lot of time up in Deer Isle and in other parts of Maine, but didn't know the Midcoast as well. And it had some dear friends here. And so came up looking for property and found a little parcel in Rockland. So we kind of pulled the camper up there and started clearing it. And the fall was coming, and I didn't want to go back to the city yet, and was looking for some excuse not to. And yeah, Peter's sister said, "Oh, why don't you go see if Peter? It's the end of it's the end of the summer. Maybe he needs some help." So I just kind of showed up on his door and crewed for him for 3 months. I had never done any farming before, but I truly loved it. I really felt it was the best work I had ever done, and enjoyed it so much. And getting to know Peter and Morgan, we just really hit it off. And I'd started things before. I'd started this restaurant with a family member. I'd started and run a public art project in Cambridge for 5 years. I had then started my design studio. So I love starting things and being part of new ideas and not knowing the answers and that process of having to figure things out. So I love that. I love that arc. And then what Peter and Morgan kind of had created, I think, over that winter when I went back to Providence. We were talking and I was helping them with a website and things, and it continued to reveal itself what role maybe I could play there. So you could keep farming while we still try to, then launch and grow this barn business. And it's been, a circuitous path, but I do think Peter and Morgan draw people that they need. And I think the farm has this sort of magnetic quality to draw the people that need to be there.
I don't think it's us, but I think it's the farm.
It's the farm. Maybe it's the farm. Well, maybe the farm brought you there.
For sure.
And you're
we're
just
all
stewarding the
like
magnetism.
bees to the nectar.
Yes, maybe that's it. Yeah, might be Syl Barrows. He was the last one to farm it in the 60s.
Yeah.
I would love to talk a little bit about the farm. How much land is there?
Yeah.
What products can people buy from you? I know that you supply several restaurants in the Midcoast, but also the public.
Sure. So, I sometimes call us a micro farm because although the land that we steward, which includes our neighbor's land that we have a long-term lease on, it's about 20 acres, but we're really growing on just a little over an acre. But we grow, it's all hand labor. We don't have a tractor in the field, so we grow a lot of food in a little space. Okay. Part of the reason for not having a tractor is space limitations, but also I just like a quiet work environment. And I like to be able to do things using this incredible thing called the body. So anyway, we're a no-till farm. And the reason we're no-till is in part because it's a very efficient way to grow food at this scale, but it's also a way to build really healthy soil, and really healthy soil creates really tasty crops. There's this direct correlation between what is going on in the soil and what you can taste. So that's been an obsessive focus, is how can we create not just the total environment around the farm to become a really diverse, rich ecosystem, but in the soil where we're growing. So we have a reputation locally for having really amazing lettuce mix, greens. We grow various heirloom tomatoes, all sorts of things. We're not at our scale a farm that can grow corn or winter squash, but we bring in the things we can't grow from other organic growers in Midcoast and in Maine. So the farm store has all those things. We focus on our niche, which is the really high value greens and tomatoes and root crops.
Can you share a bit about where the name Tenderwild came from?
Yes.
It's a great question. Actually, I think, Allison, you're like the first to ask that question.
Are you kidding me?
I thought we'd be asked all the time, what is this name?
So you're ready for it. That's what you're saying.
I'm not ready for it, but I'm happy to answer it. Yeah, well, it's interesting because when we were breaking ground, we needed to sign a lease on this land that we were putting into a long-term lease from a neighbor. And I just quickly came up with a name, Full Moon Farm. And we started an LLC called Full Moon Farm. And it was always a placeholder. I didn't know what the real farm name was going to be, but that's what we started with. It turns out that there's like 1,000 full moon farms around the country. And in fact, I went to pick up fertilizer from Fedco, which is a organic supply store about an hour away. And I said, I'm here to pick up some fertilizer for Full Moon Farm. And then I just stood there as the gentleman behind the counter was trying to find our order. And I said, is there a problem? And he said, no, there's just a lot of Full Moon Farms. So that was a good sign that it wasn't quite distinctive enough. So at somewhere, I think a year or two into it, we realized we now need the farm name.
Mm-hmm.
And thus began a long journey to find. It turns out it's hard to find a farm name that isn't already taken, because people who have farms or people who just want to call their properties farms use farm in the URL or the Instagram handle or what have you. So really, the name came from what are our values? What are we trying to create here? And it was this idea of bringing wildness into this farm space. All the unfarmed pieces of the land, we try to tend this wildness and create this diversity all around the farm. So we've planted native wildflowers, seeds everywhere we can. We have now, I think, 30 swallow boxes all around the farm. So we're constantly thinking not just about what we're growing, but this total environment that we've taken responsibility for. How can we maximize that diversity and wildness? Because I feel like that's also where sustainability comes from. That diversity is life, and it protects us against the vicissitudes of all the things that can happen to your crops. So these bird boxes, which are all around the field, if you come to the farm, especially starting about now, as all these migratory birds are returning, the entire fence line of the field there's just rows of swallows and bluebirds and sparrows lined up all along the field.
Wow.
And farmers, some folks that come to the farm and say, what do you do about these various insects that affect our kale or our cabbage or whatnot? And I don't even think about them, because these birds are flying into the field constantly. Yes, they're eating some ladybugs, they're eating some good insects as well, but they're kind of taking care of everything else.
Wow.
So that's the long-winded answer to your question is, like, we are focused on trying to tend this wildness around us.
That's really beautiful. I'm very happy to know that.
Yeah,
I've been to the farm countless times, and I just remember my first time going, and you didn't have a sign, and I was like, am I turning in the right place? And then a few times after that, you started to have a temporary sign, and then your full sign came out, and I just feel like I've seen such evolution in this space that's so important to me and important to so many people here. So I think that's an important element of the story. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh yeah, sure.
Well, before we wrap up, is there anything else that you wish the community knew about you or that you want to share?
Yeah.
I think one of the things is, we've touched on it and talked about events and gathering and all that, but just that it is an open place, and that you're welcome there. And it's not just a store where you buy your groceries, like we do have hours. Yes. Peter, Morgan, Faye do live there, but, come to the farm and enjoy it. And you don't have to schedule a tour. We'll bring you around and give you a tour, come and enjoy it and help us learn more about this community. We're not from here, and help us teach us how we can use this, to do more good. So come to the farm.
Awesome. Well, you have to answer the question that all of the guests answer before we go, and that is, what are you famous for?
I think the response people have when they come to the farm is often, and I just hear this a lot, like, what a beautiful place. And I think ultimately it's the place that we will be known for. I'm really proud of our produce. I think it's exceptional. It's delicious. I'm so excited when a child eats a carrot and says, basically, this is what a carrot is supposed to taste like.
Mm.
So I would love for the produce to also be famous, but ultimately I think it is the place. And it's also why on our logo, it's not rows of crops and produce, it's the barn and the swallows flying around the barn. I think somehow that the barn as a kind of a hearth and a place that belongs to everyone, I think that's what we'll be famous for.
Beautiful. So where can people go to find you online?
So our website is tenderwildfarm.com, and we're also on Instagram. Our handle is @tenderwildfarm.
All right. Well, make sure you go follow them. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Wonderful.
Hi, I'm Justine with Remax Jarrett & Cohn here in Midcoast Maine. Our real estate agency has 4 offices across the Midcoast, but more importantly, we live and work in the communities we serve. Our agents aren't just here for real estate. We're showing up for our neighbors. We support local businesses, volunteer at events, and regularly give back through fundraisers and community initiatives. This isn't just where we work, it's home, and we care about the people who make it special. Find home with Remax Jarrett & Cohn.